Clemson, South Carolina. This is the Kos Sports Show. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Kos Sports Show for another episode. I'm your host, of course, Andrew Koster, and today we're going to be going over all the action that occurred in Week 8 of the college football season, as well as look ahead to Week 9. And, of course, I'll also go over my Week 8 top performances, as well as the AP poll that came out this week, and as well as the Heisman Watch and my playoff predictions. So don't miss it. Let's get to it, though. And, of course, there was really not that much action this week, like exciting games. But, however, there were two games where two teams in the top 25 made some big statements. And we're going to start off with the first of them being Penn State and their dominating performance over Michigan. Just wow, to say the least. I mean, I think everyone knew that Penn State was probably going to win this game just because Michigan hasn't been productive on offense all year. Their defense has been great. I think coming into this game, they were like number one in the nation defensively. But if you look at their offense, it has not been able to or balance them out. So it's the reason they're not as good as they could be. But wow, Penn State just absolutely dominated made Michigan's defense look terrible, particularly on the running game. I think they had 5 rushing touchdowns, 2 from Saquon, and was it 3 or something from McSorley, something like that, insane. And it's very impressive. I mean, I think this game also for Saquon Barkley, it's another reminder that he deserves to be the Heisman favorite. I mean, yes, Bryce Love has been playing outstanding, but the way Saquon Barkley does, it's like he does everything because he can return kickoffs, he can catch passes out of the backfield. It just seems like more with Bryce Love, he really just is good at running, but like when it comes to like getting passes and stuff out of the backfield and all that stuff, it's just not as exciting. So I think that's kind of why I would see him as a favorite over Bryce Love. But we're going to find out if Saquon has a really good game this weekend against Ohio State. I think he clearly deserves to be the favorite. It's very much fair. He's had a great year all year. He's not really had any games where he's just slagging me. There's been 1 or 2 games where it's took him a minute to get going, but he's ended up having good games. And he's just played well on everything. Heck, he has a throwing touchdown too, in case everyone forgot about that. But aside from how well the Penn State offense played, their defense played very well too. I think this defense is very much disrespected in the league, or at least in the NCAA and college football, just because everyone so focuses on their offense with McSorley and Hamilton and Barkley and all that, and Gazitsky or whatever their tight end's name is. I forgot his name, but he's also very good. But this defense has been playing well all year. I think they've given up over 20 points maybe once or so. It's not like they've been playing very poor. They honestly just think been under the radar. But we're going to find out how good they are this weekend against J.T. Barrett and J.K. Dobbins and company, and when they go to Columbus this weekend for a top 10 matchup against the Buckeyes. That's going to be very exciting for them. But Penn State deserves, though, to be the Big Ten favorite, in my opinion. I think they've overall still have the best resume out of anybody. I mean, Ohio State would, obviously, if they'd beaten Oklahoma, but they didn't. And overall, their best team they played outside of that is probably Indiana or Maryland. And yes, they've dominated all those games that they haven't been playing Oklahoma, but how are they going to play against a good team? I don't see it. But we're going to find out this weekend, really, if they're legit or not. I just don't see it, but I still think Penn State deserves to be the Big Ten favorite. I mean, they haven't really, it looks like, dropped off at all from last year. Honestly, probably gotten better as a whole. I mean, James Franklin is doing a phenomenal job there coaching. And I also on this game, I wanted to also touch up, though, on Michigan. And, here's a question. Could Jim Harbaugh be getting closer to the hot seat? I think so. Just because, he really, while he's won a lot of games in Michigan, I think actually, though, I take that back, he won the same amount as Brady Hoke did in his first 3 seasons. He hasn't won the big games as a whole. That's the thing. Like, he's, I think, 1-2 now against Michigan State. And the one he won, it wasn't like by a line. It was only just because of how poor Michigan State was last season. But it was also the fact that he hasn't beaten Ohio State yet. He lost in his bowl game last year, or in the Orange Bowl last year to Florida State. It's more embarrassing. It's like and you feel like with all the time he's had there, he could at least be doing something by now. But I don't know. It's kind of a little frustrating for me to see with the resources that Michigan has that Harbaugh has not really improved from what he did in his first season at Michigan, where he really didn't have that much great talent. It's kind of just it's mind-boggling to me. But anyway, we're gonna move on from that. But my point on this was though is Penn State deserves to be the Big Ten favorite after this weekend, But we're gonna find out who's gonna probably be the favorite to be the Big Ten for sure next week in Columbus when the Nittany Lions go to the Horseshoe to take on the Buckeyes. It's going to be a good game. But anyway, the other team that also played very well this weekend, this is a team that, if you tuned in last week, Blake Harris from Harris Highlights and I talked about this, and that was Notre Dame. Notre Dame has been a team I think that people have just been having under the radar all season long. And, I think kind of people wrote them off after they barely lost to Georgia. But, they've been dominating all their games since then. And, we saw this weekend against USC, and this USC team was a good team. They got absolutely dominated, from the start. I think it was also USC just getting beaten themselves with some turnovers. But I mean, that's been their USC though all year, unfortunately for them. Darnold just hasn't been able to take care of the football. It's been kind of USC's downfall this year. 3 again this weekend. And, Notre Dame took advantage. And Notre Dame also ran for 377 rushing yards, which is impressive when you have guys like Wimbush and Josh Adams at the helm. They're a very good team. We still need to. I want to see a little more from their passing attack, but we're going to find out also how good they are this weekend, because I think NC State personally right now is playing better than USC. This is going to be a very exciting game. Who knew at the beginning of the year that NC State and Notre Dame would be playing? I think it was in a top 15 matchup now. It's crazy, but it's going to be very exciting. But Notre Dame, and people need to quit sleeping on them, and it's just kind of sad that people have been from the start. If they win out, they're easily in the playoff. They have still some very tough games. They play NC State this weekend. They have to go to Miami. They play Wake Forest, who isn't a bad team. They also have to go to Stanford. They have a very tough back end of their schedule. It's not easy by any means. If they can win all those games, they easily deserve to be in, hands down. And I'm not even like a Notre Dame fan or anything. I've never been the big one, but they deserve to be in. They've been playing very well. And jumping up to 9, I think this week in the people, I think finally the voters kind of started to see that. But to be fair, since Georgia, they really haven't played anyone that impressive minus Michigan State. But that was also a very impressive win, as we've seen. Michigan State that's their only one loss, of course. So Notre Dame people need to quit slipping on, man. I'm telling you, they're a legit team. I mean, even if they lose one of these games down the stretch, they're still a good football team. I'm not saying they're going to win the national championship by any means, but they are a team that people need to stay woke on for sure. But as far as also this loss, though, for USC, this hurt the Pac-12's chances of getting to the playoff big time. Definitely, as Blake and I talked about last week, we thought this was their best. USC was the Pac-12's only hope at this point. Just Washington didn't have a tough schedule. And I didn't think, in the North, the problem is, now with Washington State especially, getting throttled by, Cal, it really hurts them because they were, at that point, another chance for the Pac-12 to get in because they had some good wins and they had a good non-conference win against Boise State. But after that, you wonder how many losses they're going to have for the rest of the season. But, though, in Washington, the problem is they don't have a good non-conference schedule. And I just don't know, even if they win out, they need a lot of stuff to happen in front of them for them to get in there. USC's chances are absolutely done. If you have 2 losses in the Pac-12 this year, absolutely not. But one still is even impossible for them. So it's a big deal. So anyway, USC, heck, might not even win the Pac-12 South at this point. Arizona State in these past couple of weeks have looked very good. A very good win on the road last week and against Utah. And then the previous week, of course, we all know they had that major upset against Washington. This Arizona State team is legit. I'm telling you. Their 3 losses have been the teams that have been in the top 25 at some point this season for multiple weeks. So they're a good team. So people need to keep an eye out for Arizona State in the South. But anyway, my point from all this is, though, that from this game, that Notre Dame is legit. People need to quit sleeping on them. They're not going anywhere. Brian Kelly has his team back. This team was so close to being very good last year. They've lost a lot of tough, close games, and this year they just haven't been able to quite turn the corner. They're kind of like Texas this year. Texas really hasn't gotten blown out by anybody. They've been in a dog. They had a lost by in overtime to USC. They lost a late close game to Maryland, even though that one was a fluke. I think everyone can say now. They lost a very close game to Oklahoma, and they lost a very close game last week to Oklahoma State. And they've also beaten Iowa State. People keep forgetting that. I'm going to touch up on Iowa State in a little bit. That's actually pretty good for Texas as well. But my point in all this though is Notre Dame is legit this year. They are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. And if they crash and burn on the stretch, I'm going to blame it on injuries because I don't know how else they could do it. They're playing lights out right now. Josh Adams is legit. And if he keeps this up and going down the stretch, I could easily see him being in the Heisman watch for sure as well. But not quite yet. We'll keep up on that though. But then also, I want to touch up only really on two other games this weekend because they were just kind of more. They were good games. They were really the other two good games this weekend, and that was Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. They didn't play each other, by the way, but they both survived scares. One was to Kansas State, and that was Oklahoma, and the other Oklahoma State survived in Austin and in overtime against Texas. The problem, and that was a fun fact though. That's Oklahoma State's 5th straight win in Austin, and if I remember correctly, that's the first time that's ever happened before. For a team to win 5 straight at DK, or maybe it was Oklahoma State, one of those two. If someone knows that fact for sure, please correct me on that. But, Oklahoma's defense since Ohio State, has been playing terrible. This Kansas State offense has not looked good all year, and then they put up over 30 on Oklahoma. That is very concerning if you're an Oklahoma fan. I don't know what has happened since Ohio State, but they've given up a crap ton of points to Baylor, Texas, Iowa State, and now Kansas State. That is not good for your program. I don't know what's going on though. I mean, they're thankful their offense is playing good and keep them in these games, but that is very concerning. And you wonder if they want to have a chance against TCU, this defense is going to have to wake up because TCU's defense right now is playing lights out, probably the best in the Big 12. For sure, and they will definitely limit Baker Mayfield and that offense to probably not 40 points. Heck, they might even keep them under 30, as crazy as that sounds with this Oklahoma offense. But, Oklahoma's defense, if they don't wake up, they're not going to have a chance to win the Big 12. Not at all. And, the same goes with Oklahoma State, but the offensive side, this offense last week, I mean, give credit to Texas's defense. They've been playing great all year, but 13 points? Mason Rudolph and company? James Washington? That offense? At Texas? Wait, 13 points? I don't get it. I don't know how you can do that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to take anything away from Texas because we're seeing slowly Tom Herman have an effect on this program. It's kind of reminded me of what Kirby Smart was doing at Georgia. I mean, of course, these aren't his players, and he's kept them in all these games. It's not like they're getting blown out by any means, and their defense is starting to play. Of course, it sucks that the Ellinger got hurt, but who knows? I mean, they came very close to winning that game, but they need a signature win under Herman, and I think they're gonna get it. I just don't know against who, but Oklahoma State's offense needs to wake up too. I mean, they're still in the hunt for the Big 12. Don't get me wrong, but heck, I don't know how good Oklahoma. Who knows if they don't wake up though? At least on offense. I mean, give credit to their defense. I think their defense is underrated, but their offense, they've kind of fallen off. I feel a little bit. I mean, as I pull up these stats here, it was pretty bad for them. I mean, I think they also had some turnovers. I remember I was watching this at the bars on Saturday. Oh, okay. So they had they had 428 total yards. Well, they only had one turnover, so that's not bad. So they just couldn't get the job done. I think here's why. 5 of 18 on third down. That is huge. That if you're going to do that, I mean, I don't care who it is, you're not going to do anything. I mean, everything else, they also look very efficient, but third down seems like really killed them. I mean, they had 26 first downs and completely outgained Texas in the yardage department in both not that much more in passing, but more in throwing, but more in the rushing department. But you got to convert on third down. If they can't do that this down the stretch, they're not going to have a chance in the Big 12. So I know Mike Gundy's probably going to get them in gear. And I think they're going to bounce back. I mean, it's not like they lost. They still hung on. And this is a good Texas team, like I said. It's not like Texas is a poor team. They're a solid team. Their record, I think, is a little bit misleading on how good they are. Yeah, they're 3-4, but their losses have been, minus the Maryland one, have been in USC, Oklahoma, and now Oklahoma State. So some very good teams. So they're right there. They are really close to getting that signature win under Herman. And these really are his players, like I said. Once he gets some more time to recruit, I think Texas is going to come back. We're already seeing what he's doing to this defense, and it's very impressive. And the offense is slowly going to get better. The problem is the offense, they have no running attack besides Ellinger, and it's pretty embarrassing for them. The passing is pretty solid, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State survived. They're still easily in the hunt for the Big 12, and Bedlam's going to be huge because that game could potentially decide who gets first or second in the Big 12, or who gets second and third in the Big 12. Of course, Oklahoma still has to play TCU, but I don't know. TCU looks like they could easily run away with Oklahoma right now, the way they are playing. They had a very impressive win this weekend at Kansas. I mean, of course, it's Kansas, don't get me wrong, but still very good win. But anyway, also, going off of that, those are my 4 games really I wanted to talk about this weekend. Then I want to go over my top Week 8 performances. And the first one is going to be Will Grier from West Virginia. He was 26 of 37 through 375 yards and 5 touchdowns in their win against Baylor. I mean, yes, they struggled and held on against Baylor, but still very impressive from Will Grier. You just wonder how good Florida's offense would be if he was still there. Very sad Florida fans, I'm sure, right now. And then, of course, also Darius Geis from LSU. 22 carries, 276 yards and a touchdown in their win over Ole Miss. And, of course, Saquon Barkley of Penn State, the Heisman frontrunner easily in my opinion. 15 carries, 106 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then, of course, 3 receptions for 53 yards and a touchdown in their dominating win over Michigan. An honorable mention will go with Josh Adams and Baker Mayfield. But Josh Adams had 3 rushing touchdowns, and Baker Mayfield threw for over 400 yards, and they're both of their big wins as well. And of course, on defense, Roman Richards, Oklahoma State, 6 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and a game-winning interception also against Texas in their overtime winner in Austin. And Michael Pickney of Miami, 9 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 3.5 tackles for losses, and their big win against Syracuse. And then Trevor Morris of Rutgers, 15 tackles, and their win over, I believe, was it Illinois? I don't remember. Actually, I take that back. I don't remember off the top of my head who was it against. Who was that against? Oh, it was Purdue. Take that back. And their very close win over Purdue. And then honorable mention, of course, we'll go with Will Harvey of Iowa State and J.J. Wilson of Arizona State. 2 also very good performances. But anyway, enough of that. Those are my top week 8 performances. I like doing these. I think these individual performances by players each week deserve to get some love. It's only fair. While it is a team game, sometimes there's players that lead the game and become leaders of the game the way they perform, and they kind of get everyone else going. But anyway, enough of that. So of course the AP poll came out for week 9. There wasn't too much of a change. Only one team dropped out, and then the only team to come in was Iowa State, who is 5-2, and people need to keep a lookout on them as well. Don't get me wrong, but there was a little bit of really not much of a shakeup, minus Notre Dame jumping a couple spots as well up to 9, which I think is very reasonable compared to, I believe who they jumped. Was it Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, because they dominated USC was 14 at the time, and Oklahoma and Oklahoma State struggled. Notre Dame dominated. I think it's only fair If you look at how all those teams played over that weekend. But also, people are wondering, I've seen this complaint a lot. Miami behind Clemson. This has actually been really talked about for people. Now people are just trying to say, oh, because Miami beat Syracuse and Clemson didn't, Miami deserves to be ahead of them. So you're saying because of one game, that Miami should have jumped Clemson. Honestly, if they had won in a more dominating fashion, I would have been okay with that. I would have been absolutely okay with them jumping Clemson. But the fact that they also only won by a possession, it's not like they absolutely dominated Syracuse. And remember, what it would have been like if Rozier had been hurt in the second half? I bet Syracuse could have won then too. So if they had, like I said, if they had dominated, I would have been completely okay with them jumping Clemson. And honestly should have jumped Ohio State too. I don't think Ohio State should be ahead of either Clemson or Miami, in all honesty, because, Ohio State, yes, they've been dominating their games, but against who? That's the question. Their best win is either against Indiana or Maryland. It's I don't know what people see in them. Is it like, didn't we have this discussion last year? Kind of, when, of course, ESPN, I feel like, is going to keep hyping them up. That football power index thing, and for at one point had them won forever. I don't know what was going on with that, but I just cannot get on the Ohio State hype train. I really can't. This JT Barrett, when we see him in the big games lately, he's not good. He can't throw the ball downfield in big games. He can just throw those little dump offs to Dobbins and Webb and all them and all his weapons on offense. But at the end of the day, when you get to the big games, and I don't think he's going to have a great performance against Penn State this week by any means. I think this Penn State defense is going to surprise a lot of people and have a party in the backfield against Ohio State, because I cannot buy their hype. If Ohio State wins this weekend, though, I will take back what I said. But as of right now, I don't think so. I mean, coming into the year, I didn't think they were that good. I just think they lost too much on overall on both sides of the ball. It just wasn't that impressive to me. But anyway, at the end of the day, there's still the AP poll. The AP poll really doesn't mean too much by any means. It's just more, I think it's just entertainment. That's really just kind of that's how it's always really been. Especially now with the playoff, and of course when the BCS standings came out. It's just more for entertainment. It's just for water cooler talk, in my opinion. It's just, I guess it gives you more a relative, idea of what the playoff committee is going to do, but it's definitely not exact by any means. Because the AP poll and the playoff committee are totally different. And, these rankings, I think they come out next week. They're going to be very interesting, especially with what could happen this weekend. Because Penn State or Ohio State are going to drop. So, and of course there's some other games too. And what was it? TCU could fall. What was it? NC State or Notre Dame could fall. The top 10 could be very interesting this week, and of course there'll be other games as well. But it's very interesting to see how this will go as this upcoming week. How the committee after this weekend will rank their team. Who will they have in their top 4, as well as 5 and 6, and then. But anyway, also we'll look real quick at see who got others receiving votes. Texas A&M got a lot of votes, 74, and that's understandable. The Texas A&M has gotten a lot better. I mean, after the UCLA game, everyone, including myself, thought Kevin Summerlin was on the hot seat. But then again, he played probably Alabama the best of any team. Or his team played Alabama better than anyone else has all season. And they've won all their other games besides the complete choke against UCLA, of course. But I think his players have bought into him this year, and they're going to play well. I think there's a good chance that, I'm not going to say for sure, but they could end up even finishing second in the SEC West. I mean, there's still a lot of the season to go. Of course, there's still LSU, and Auburn will have some say-so in that. But, it's definitely, they deserve to be getting votes, and who knows? If they win this week, I'm sure they'll probably crack the top 25. I'm surprised Michigan got as many votes as they did, considering how poor they played as well. But Mississippi State's also climbed back up with some votes, 43. They've been quietly winning. Of course, they won last week at Kentucky, or not at Kentucky. They hosted Kentucky, but they beat Kentucky, who's only had one loss coming in. San Diego, and then of course San Diego State after that, 7 votes. They lost again. I think they're kind of falling off here. They could easily still win the Mountain West, but as far as the New Year's Six Bowls goes, I think it was honestly gone after Boise State, but it's definitely gone now. South Carolina getting to, I don't know. I guess 5-2. I think Georgia's honestly going to absolutely demolish them in 2 weeks. I don't even know who they're playing this weekend. Georgia Tech getting 5. I wish they got more. Considering that Clemson's playing the most, they've been in the top 25. But that'll be exciting, though. It's a primetime matchup. So I'm interested to watch Traquan Marshall live this weekend. And then Toledo's getting one. Toledo's only loss has been to Miami. And it's not like they were blown out in that game. They hung around for most of that game until the fourth quarter. That's when Miami ran away with it. And Marshall getting one. I really don't know enough about Marshall to say anything about them. So I'm not going to really comment on them. But anyway, that is my thoughts overall on the AP poll. Not too much of a change. It's nowhere close to compared to last week, of course. But anyway, it's still, like I said, it doesn't represent the playoff committee. It's just more water cooler talk, in my opinion. I talk about it too. I think it's intriguing to see what their logic is. But anyway, enough of that. We can move on that. And then playoff predictions. They're the exact same as last week. Really, nothing different. 1 Alabama, 2 Penn State, 3 Georgia, 4 TCU, 5 Wisconsin, and 6 Clemson. There was nothing really to make it change. Penn State obviously is not going to jump ahead of Alabama by any means. Alabama dominated again against Tennessee. But who is a dumpster fire? But, that was expected. They did what they needed to do. They took care of business and won that game. Penn State, same thing, except it was against probably a way better opponent, in my opinion. But I'm surprised they didn't also get any first-place votes after that. But I get why. Alabama's really been the dominant team all season. But Georgia staying at 3, I think it was fair. I don't think TCU deserved to jump them just because, while TCU had a great win this weekend, it was against Kansas. And Kansas this year has been, to say the least, pretty poor. So, nothing too exciting there. Wisconsin's still undefeated. They really haven't played anybody yet. If I remember correctly, I don't think they will really until the Big Ten championship game. Of course, if they win the Big Ten championship, they're into the playoff as long as they stay undefeated. If they don't, but they win the Big Ten championship, then that'd be more questioning. Then there'd be some big debate just because they will play nobody good non-conference. Their schedule in the Big Ten overall was very poor, and compared, there'll be a lot of other teams. If there's a lot of other one-loss teams looking to get in, I could see them easily getting left out. And then Clemson, I'm still going to put at 6. They're one of the 2 teams to have current wins over teams in the top 25. Or one of 3 to have multiple wins, of course. The others, I think, being TCU and I forgot the other off the top of my. I think definitely not Penn State. I think it was Notre Dame, if I remember correctly, actually. But anyway, I think Clemson deserves to be ahead of Ohio State just because of the resume currently. If Ohio State wins this weekend, then we can honestly have more of a debate. But until then, they don't have any impressive wins. Their best win, like I said, is against Indiana or Maryland. They lost their toughest game to Oklahoma at home and honestly got overall dominated in that game. So that's why I can't buy them. Honestly, if we do 7 and 8, I'll put Miami ahead of them too, just because they are undefeated. And even then you can look at their resume. Miami might even have a better resume than Ohio State, just because they have beaten some good teams in Georgia Tech and Florida State. Yes, they're not ranked, but I still think that Ohio State has something to prove. I don't know if they will yet, but if they do, we'll find out this weekend, of course. And of course, they still have to play. I think Michigan and Michigan State, so they have a tough schedule down the stretch, of course. So I'm excited though to see how the Big Ten East unfolds though as a whole. It's probably going to come down to Ohio State or Penn State, but don't forget about Michigan State sitting out there, hanging out there. They're still, what is it? Where are they in the AP poll right now, if I remember correctly? They are 16, undefeated in the conference. So, their one loss was to Notre Dame. So, keep an eye out for Michigan State. They can make it come out of nowhere and surprise some people. I don't necessarily think they might have the offense to do that, but they could. So, anyway, it's going to come down to a 3-horse race between those three. Michigan, they're out, easily out. After the loss to Penn State, no way in the heck do they have a chance. I mean, they can maybe, and their offense can find a way to get it together. Maybe they could spoil maybe Ohio State's season, but that's about it in my opinion. Their season, as far as like competing for a Big Ten division title or a championship, is over. But anyway, that's all I have to say really about my playoff predictions. Like I said, it's the exact same as last week, so nothing really too exciting on that. There was no reason to change them. It's not like anyone had any reasons. Like, of course, Penn State did have a more impressive win because of who they played. I mean, Alabama still dominated, so it's not like I'm easily going to put Penn State over them. And I mean, I don't think I'm going to put anybody over Alabama really for the rest of the year unless they lose, obviously, or if they really struggle against a very poor team and like escape. And I just don't think it's going to happen under Saban. He's prepared his teams for those kind of games, and I don't see it happening at all. I can't. But who knows? It could, but I don't think so. But anyway, enough of the playoff predictions. You know them. Let's go on to the Heisman. Let's go on to my Heisman watch. And of course, my favorite still, Saquon Barkley. I loved it. He was my favorite at the beginning of the season. He still is. It's kind of hard. This guy is so fun to watch. He can do it all. He can return kicks. He can throw a touchdown pass. And of course, obviously, we know he can run the ball very well, as well as catch some passes out of the backfield as well. He can do it all. It's very impressive. I haven't seen a player as exciting as this since McCaffrey even. So he's on pace, I think, to beat McCaffrey's maybe all-purpose yards record. Or he might be. I don't remember, honestly, off the top of my head. But, easily is my favorite still to win the Heisman. Of course, there are still some other players in the hunt. If he were to slip up, Bryce Love, of course, having a phenomenal season. Of course, he did hurt. I think he is questionable for this week, Stanford's game against Oregon State, which will be very interesting to see if he plays in that or not. Because if he doesn't play, that could hurt his chances just a smidge. But I think he'll be ready to go. I think this guy's a tough cookie. Baker Mayfield, of course, still playing very well. He's played well all year. I think, he's only thrown, 1 or 2 interceptions on the season. And it's playing phenomenal, honestly, for this offense. There's a big reason why Oklahoma is winning a lot of their games is because he is playing lights out. Of course, threw for over 400 yards this last game and 2 touchdowns. And then, of course, Mason Rudolph, I'm going to keep him up there. He didn't have his best game. He didn't throw as many touchdown passes, but he still was a solid passer last game. He still threw for over 250 yards. I think it was a touchdown. So it's not like he played poor. He just didn't play as good as he had in his previous games. And of course, there's another one, though. I talked about Damian Harris last week. He didn't play as good this week, so I'm going to kind of leave him off right now. But he's still kind of one of those dark horses that he could come out of there if he has a big second half. It's going to, I think, take a lot, though. But there's another guy who's coming out there, and that's Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin. This guy is a big reason why Wisconsin is undefeated. He is definitely the heart and soul of their offense. He's, I think, on pace to break the NCAA rushing record. And I think he got to 1,000 yards, the fastest in was it for any freshman in history as far as rushing goes. So I don't think necessarily he'll win the Heisman, just because you also have to look at who he's played. But still, you have to admire what he's done. It's very impressive. He's easily one of the top 5 backs in the country. He's easily up there with Saquon. Definitely, I think 2 in the Big Ten, and Dobbins behind those 2. But he's definitely deserves something like that. He's a great. He's can break tackles easily. He's also got some very underrated speed, I think, as well. But yes, Jonathan Taylor, in my opinion, deserves to be in this Heisman watch this week. I'm not necessarily saying he's going to win the Heisman by any means. Of course, he's one of those guys I think that will, if Saquon or Bryce Love slip up, then we can maybe talk about that. That opened the door. But He's definitely still behind those, or is it him, Bryce Love, and Baker Mayfield? I'll have him out even with Mason Rudolph, just because of how Mason Rudolph didn't have his best game last week. But yeah, anyway, that's what I just wanted to say on the Heisman overall. And then, of course, we're going to move on from all the stuff that happened in Week 8. We're going to go ahead and look at Week 9. So there's some 4 top 25 games this weekend between like top 25 teams. And the first one I'm going to bring up, of course, the one that's going down in Columbus. That's where College Game Day is going to be. Penn State versus Ohio State. I think I saw some people are getting mad that Game Day is going there. I get why people are annoyed because they've already been to Columbus once this year. But at the end of the day, it's the only top 10 matchup this weekend. It's the first top 10 matchup we've had, I think, in a couple of weeks. So it deserves to go there. As much as I hate agreeing with ESPN, because a lot of times, a lot of their guys just do a lot of stuff that just makes my head spin. It's fair for them to go, but enough of that. I think when it comes down to this game, it's going to be really, I think, can Ohio State's defense, which has played well since Oklahoma, can they stop Penn State's phenomenal offense and the dynamic trio of, so you could say quartet, but I'll start with trio when it comes to Trace McSorley, the quarterback, Saquon Barkley, running back, and Josh Hamilton, that receiver. And when I say quartet, I also mean Gesicki, their tight end, who is also very underrated. Very, very great tight end. Easily one of the top 5 tight ends in the country. But, I don't know. I haven't seen Ohio State really shut down like a potent offense. And people can say, like, what are you talking about? I mean, their defense has been playing phenomenal this year. Yeah, I guess too. I'm going to keep bringing this up because it's not been against anyone impressive. I mean, don't get me wrong. It would be worse if they were giving up points to all those cupcakes they were beating up on. But, I mean, no, they aren't. But at the end of the day, I just can't get on the hype train for Ohio State defensively either. Because we saw when they did against Oklahoma. And until I watch them this weekend, I'm not going to get to watch them live because it's going to be going. Actually, no, I will be because it's at 3:30. I take that back. I will get to watch some of this game. I won't get to but I just don't know enough to see if their defense or their team as a whole is legit, because we don't know what the offense is going to do either, because this Penn State defense is going to come after JT Barrett. This Penn State defense, like I said earlier, is very underrated, and I think they're going to have some field day, particularly in the backfield. If anything, if Ohio State can get on the perimeter in this game with Dobbins and company, which I know they're going to do a lot of kind of like little flip dump off passes with JT Barrett and stuff, because this is what they love to do, because we know Barrett is not the best deep ball, doesn't have the best deep ball. I'm not sorry if I'm throwing shade at JT, but I just never have been impressed with him. That's why also I didn't mention his Heisman thing, just because if he has a very good performance against Penn State, he'll be in there next week for sure. But if they can get on the perimeter, I think that's maybe the one place maybe where Penn State has been vulnerable this year, or maybe their secondary a little bit. But I think with JT Barrett, they're not going to be too worried, I think, with the deep ball, just because we've seen him in the big games with the deep ball lately. We saw it against Clemson last year, Oklahoma this year. What was it? I think even Michigan last year, he wasn't that great with the deep ball. But I just don't see it. I really do think that Penn State is going to be deserves to be the favorite coming into this game. If Ohio State does win this game, though, I'll take back all the stuff I've been saying about them lately, and that Urban Meyer's turning around. Because, of course, yes, Urban Meyer is their coach. Urban Meyer has been a successful coach at Ohio State and Florida. I'm not going to say is necessarily having his best year this year, but, he has gotten them turned around since the Oklahoma game, but we just haven't seen them play a quality of like a good enough opponent really to say much. But we'll find out a lot this weekend. I'm very excited to watch this as much as this game is like, hey, of course, I'll have to be heading out in the Valley in the second half of it, of course, because I've got my own game to attend to. But I'm not. This isn't one of the games I'm going to be previewing for Clemson and Georgia Tech. I'm just going to be making a pick on that. But also, so the next big game, of course, is NC State at Notre Dame. The Wolfpack, this is their first ever trip to South Bend, and it's going to be for potentially one of the biggest games in school history. And, this team has been playing offensively and defensively, has been playing very well. Ryan Finley has been one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the country all year. I got to watch him last year when they came to Clemson and almost beat us in overtime. He was a very, very poised quarterback. And he's gotten better, it seems like, from there. Of course, Chubb on defense has been playing very well too. Their defense as a whole has just been playing very well. But, I think we'll see how they do in a very hostile environment. I mean, people can say, oh, they won at Florida State. They played Florida State at noon, and if you watch enough Florida State games, noon there, it's 11 there because they're in Central Time. When that game's first starting, the stadium's nowhere close to full. It's still a lot of people getting in there. It sucks for Florida State, but at the end of the day, it wasn't as intimidating as it could be. But of course, they had that big win against Louisville, and where time was kind of starting to look worse and worse. But, after this past weekend, Louisville had a nice win at Florida State. It's looking a little better. I mean, of course, they do have the bad loss to South Carolina. But then again, South Carolina, as much crap as I love to give them, they are 5-2. So it's really not that bad. But I just don't know. We'll see. The thing is, I think, for this game, is can Notre Dame be two-dimensional, at least, and not just rely on the run game with Josh Adams? Can they throw the deep ball? Can Wimbush make enough plays with his arm against this NC State defense who can get after you and who can also has a very good pass defense, I think, as well? If they can throw the ball effectively, I think NC State is going to be in big trouble, because I think Notre Dame's defense as well has been playing well, as good as anyone this year as well. But it's going to be very exciting to watch as well. I'm very excited for this one too. If NC State beats Notre Dame, I'm going to be very scared for Clemson next week when they have to go to Raleigh to play them. But that'd be really cool though, because I bet Game Day will be going there, and I'm be very excited for that. It should go there. And last time Clemson played in Raleigh, it was very tough. But I'm very excited for this one too. That looking at it, when is this game on Saturday? It is going to be at also 3:30. Oh, so I'm gonna have to have multiple TVs, it looks like, to watch them in Penn State and Ohio State. So I'm very excited for that. And then I didn't think I'd be talking about TCU at Iowa State. A lot of people. This is where a lot of people want Game Day to go, but I get why, because this is Iowa State's first time that they are 5-2 in 15 years. And they played very well. Their two losses were a very, I think, close losses. The one was against Iowa, who's still a very solid team, and of course, I'd say that one's it's more of a rivalry game. So I kind of say more that anything can happen in that one. A very impressive comeback by Iowa in that game, by the way. And then of course they lost to Texas, who is still a very good football team. Even though they're 3-4, that loss is bad. And I remember they went to Oklahoma and won. And then they had a very impressive win against Texas Tech, who I thought this game would be the other way around, just because Texas Tech's defense overall had been playing very well coming into that game. But they absolutely dominated Texas Tech on both sides of the ball. So TCU cannot look over these guys by any means. I think TCU is still the favorite in the Big 12, but if they could easily slip up in this game, and then the Big 12. They're going to be in trouble and trying to get someone in the playoff as well, because then I think it's going to be wide open again, because then you'll have probably a one-loss Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma, and also a one-loss in the conference, at least Iowa State. So it's going to be wide open at that point. And don't count on West Virginia either. That team will also probably have one loss, potentially, but they have a big game as well this weekend. And that's the last one I'm going to be talking about in a minute. But also, Kenny Hill for TCU has been playing very well. And TCU's defense, like I said earlier, lights out. I think easily the best in the Big 12. And Gary Patterson, remember the last time TCU, I think, was this good? It was the first year they had the playoff, and their one loss was to a great comeback by Baylor. But we saw that they probably deserved to be in that playoff just because the way they dominated Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl that year. But there's I'm not gonna say they're for sure out of the woods yet, because they've still got a tough schedule, and this is definitely part of their tough schedule for sure. Iowa State, very surprising, but I'm very excited to watch this game as well. And for those of you who are curious, that game will be at 3:30. Goodness gracious. Why all the good games have to be at 3:30? Ugh. And thankfully, the last one by the way, all these times are Eastern. And then, of course, the last one I'm going to be talking about, mentioned it earlier just a minute, Oklahoma State at West Virginia. This game, thankfully, is at noon Eastern time. It is in Morgantown, a very tough place to play, by the way. And this is going to be a very good game. I think West Virginia is very close to being undefeated. They lost a tough game to Virginia Tech at the beginning of the year, and they lost a very close game to TCU this year as well. So they're very close to being undefeated as well. Will Grier is a great quarterback. He's playing as good as any quarterback right now in the country, in my opinion. Oklahoma State, if their offense plays like they did this past weekend against Texas, West Virginia is going to run them out of Morgantown big time, because Will Grier and them are in that company is going to get some points. I think this is going to be one of those more classic Big 12 shootouts that we've been used to, because the Big 12's definitely been down some in scoring this year. It's not quite as bad as it had been in these past couple of years with a lot of teams more going in the 50s. It's definitely, the defense in the Big 12 has improved a little bit. I can definitely say that for sure. If you watch, especially teams like Texas and TCU and Texas Tech at times. I mean, even when Texas Tech lost to Ohio State, it's not like they gave up in the 60s. They gave up in the 30s. But I think West Virginia is definitely a team to keep an eye out for in the Big 12. They're still easily in the hunt for the title. It's especially if TCU were to slip up this weekend. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Big 12 unfolds. But I think with them is if their defense can make enough stops against Mason Rudolph and James Washington, this Oklahoma State offense, if they can, I think they've got a very good chance, especially when they're playing in that home crowd in Morgantown. It's gonna be a dogfight. Of course, they beat Texas Tech there earlier this year. They haven't lost there yet this year as well. Morgantown's a very tough place to play, so Oklahoma State better be ready to go. So anyway, those are the games I just wanted to talk about there. A little bit of a preview, nothing too fancy there. But now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna make our Week 9 picks. I don't even remember how bad I was last week. I know it was definitely not as good as I wanted. Of course, the Texas upset, which I picked last week, didn't come through. But anyway, let's get to the action and here going down this week. Mississippi State, first off, playing at Texas A&M. This is actually a good going to be a good game, I think, just because both of these teams are receiving a good amount of votes in the AP poll. They're sitting right out there, but with it being at Kyle Field in the 12th man, I got to go with Texas A&M. Their defense has been playing very well this year. I think their running game is going to make enough plays here against this Mississippi State defense to get them the win in this one. I like Texas A&M by 2 touchdowns or so, for sure. Then going off of that, we also have Louisville at Wake Forest. This is actually, both of these teams have been playing very solid. Of course, Louisville, a little bit of a disappointing year for them. Their defense looked a little better, though, last week. And, of course, Wake Forest had a tough loss at Georgia Tech last week. But I think Lamar Jackson makes enough plays in this game to get Louisville the win here at Wake Forest. Even though the Wake Forest defense overall as a whole has been playing very well, I still like Lamar Jackson and company to get this win. Despite all the injuries they have, Louisville wins by a touchdown or so. Good game, but Louisville, for sure. Then, of course, we had the Floyd of Rosedale, Minnesota at Iowa. Both these teams, they're having subpar years, not having anything great. But at the end of the day, I think Iowa's defense is going to make enough plays for them. They're going to make sure that Minnesota does not row the boat, for sure. But I like Iowa in this one by a field goal. Very close one, but Iowa wins the Floyd of Rosedale this weekend, I say. And then, of course, after that, we have in the Pac-12, in the battle for first place in the Pac-12 South, basically, USC at Arizona State. This is a very intriguing game just because Arizona State is a team that no one's talking about, even though after their win against Washington State, a lot of people had them. I think all the guys on game day last week had them losing to Utah last week. I thought they would win at Utah, and as we saw, they did. The defense is playing lights out right now for Arizona State, and Todd Graham has got his team behind him, and for sure. But I think USC, the injuries are just going to catch up to them. I think Arizona State is going to win this one and take control of the Pac-12 South in this one. I think it's going to be a very close game, but I think Arizona State wins this one by a touchdown or a field goal. Very good game, though. I'm very excited to see how this one will unfold as well. Then after that, Texas Tech at Oklahoma. Texas Tech these last couple of weeks, they've kind of fallen off a little bit. They cracked the top 25 a couple of weeks ago, but then lost to West Virginia. Oklahoma has still been very shaky on the offensive side of the ball, but I think Oklahoma and Baker Mayfield make enough plays in this game offensively. Their defense will give up some points. I think Texas Tech's offense is going to have a bounce-back game, but it's going to be another one of those more high-scoring games in the Big 12. I think that we're been used to seeing these past couple of years. I like Oklahoma, though, in this one by a touchdown or so. Very good game, though, as well, I'd say. Georgia versus Florida in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party in Jacksonville. I think Florida's won the last 3 in this series. I think that's going to end this weekend. I take that back, 4 in this series, but I think Georgia ends that this weekend, and it's going to be ugly, I think, in this game. I think Georgia runs away with this one, and Jim McElwain is going to be seriously on the hot seat, and Florida will drop another one and fall to 3-4, and the Dogs will be easily in control of the SEC East. And remember, they'll have a tough, and they have a big one after this with South Carolina the week after, but they need to get through Florida because they need to end this streak against the Gators first before that one. But I like the Dogs to run away with this one easily. Of course, I grew up a diehard Dog fan, but I think that's really is going to happen. You've just seen Florida's offense is nothing to show for them. Georgia wins this one very comfortably. And of course, after this, Wazoo at Arizona. Arizona, since Khalil Tate has taken over at quarterback for them, they've been playing lights out on offense. And, Wazoo, they bounced back after that loss to Cal 2 weeks ago, last week with a 28-0 win at Colorado. But I think that Khalil Tate is going to continue on his tear, and Arizona is going to win this one in an upset. And Arizona is a team that only has 2 losses, so keep an eye out for them as well in the Pac-12 South. But I like the Wildcats to win this one by a touchdown or so. I love watching Khalil Tate play, and I think he's going to get this one done for the Wildcats for sure. Then after this one, I will be at actually Georgia Tech at Clemson. This is a big chance for Clemson to bounce back. Of course, last time we saw Clemson play at Syracuse on a Friday night, lost by a 3. What I've heard though from this week though is that Kelly Bryant, he is basically healthy. His ankle as of today Monday is 80 to 85% healthy. I'm very interested to see how he will play though. But I think though that we've seen what Clemson's defense has done these last 3 years when they played the triple option, of course. And Paul Johnson. I think that Brent Venables is going to have his defense ready to go. I think last week was just an off day for them. I think they're going to easily bounce back, and I think Clemson's going to win this one pretty comfortably. I really do. Traquan Marshall, don't get me wrong, he's been great to watch all year, but I just don't think he has enough around them to help him out. I think Clemson's defense shuts down Georgia Tech's triple option and wins this one by 2 or 3 touchdowns in this game. But I'm very excited to see, though, this triple option attack from Georgia Tech. And then, of course, after this, UCLA at Washington, Josh Rosen and company traveling up to Seattle. UCLA, of course, they've also kind of fallen off as well. I like the Huskies in this one to bounce back as well. I think it's going to be Jake Browning's going to play much better this week than he did the last time we saw them against Arizona State. I like the Huskies in this one by 3 touchdowns or so. Very, pretty much nowhere close to a good game. And after this, Michigan State and Northwestern. Michigan State has only 1 loss, and I was saying look out for them. They have been kind of shaking these last couple of games. They haven't been playing haven't been blowing anybody out. And Northwestern is a very solid team, coming off a big win last week against Iowa. I like Northwestern in this one in an upset. I like Northwestern in this one by a field goal or a touchdown, and down goes Sparty. And they're still going to. I think they'll still be in the Big Ten hunt, but I think their offense hasn't been making enough plays lately, and this will be a wake up call for them if anything, if they do manage to get out of Evanston with a win here. But I'd say Northwestern upset by 3 or 7. Very good game though, but Northwestern. And then of course after this, we'll get to all the top 25 games now. TCU at Iowa State. This is, of course, Iowa State has been the surprise of the year so far, TCU has been the surprise of the year. Also, Iowa State has as well, for sure. But I think TCU and Kenny Hill and company on offense making enough plays on the offensive side of the ball. I think this game is, Iowa State's playing at home. The stadium's going to be rocking, but I just don't think they can hang in there with TCU's offense. And I think TCU's defense makes enough plays as well. TCU wins this one by 2 touchdowns or so. it's going to be as close game, I think, but they pull away is also what I'm going to say about this one. But yes, TCU wins this game. And then after that, Oklahoma State at West Virginia, of course, in Morgantown. I talked about this. I like West Virginia in this one just because the way they've been playing lately is it's hard to go against West Virginia. And after seeing Oklahoma State play last week, I still think they can make enough plays on the offensive side of the ball. I think Will Grier is going to outperform Mason Rudolph in this game, and I'm going Mountaineers in this one by a field goal or so. And then after that, of course, NC State at Notre Dame. The Wolfpack, like I said earlier, making their first trip ever to South Bend. But I just think that Josh Adams and company and Wimbush are going to be just too much for an NC State's defense. And the Irish's defense, I think, is going to shut down Ryan Finley. I like the Irish in this one by 2 touchdowns or so. And this could really, any chance NC State had maybe in making the playoff, if they were to win out, will go down the drain. I think the Irish keep on rolling, though, in this one. I like them by 2 touchdowns or so. And then, of course, last but not least, the only top 10 matchup of the weekend, Penn State at Ohio State in the Horseshoe in Columbus. Like I said, I haven't really been on the Ohio State bandwagon yet, and that's why this weekend I'm going with Penn State. I think they're gonna win this one actually pretty comfortably, kind of like Oklahoma did. I just don't think Ohio State can make enough plays on the offensive side of the ball in the big games. Yes, we've seen them play well against those piss poor teams, but I just don't think they can make enough plays against this Penn State defense, and one that, like I said, is very underrated. But I like Penn State in this one by 2 or 3 touchdowns, actually, surprisingly. I just don't think Ohio State can make enough plays. But yes, Penn State takes firm control over the Big Ten East in this one easily. Nittany Lions, big time. But of course, after that, after all those picks, I got to have my upset alert. And this one may surprise some people, of course. And that is Houston at South Florida. And here's why. South Florida's been kind of shaky this year. Everyone talked about they were the big team, the group of 5 to make a run. But then there's a lot of other teams from the American Conference who have been making a statement, including Navy's been playing very well, Memphis has been playing very well, and Central Florida's been playing very well. Only Houston's still not a bad team, even though Tom Herman's gone. They almost beat Memphis last week. I think there's a good chance they could beat Charlie Strong and company at South Florida. South Florida's still a good program, and they easily have a chance to go on and win the American Conference and get a New Year's 6 bid. And of course, I think whoever wins between Central Florida and South Florida will get the New Year's 6 bid. But keep an eye on this one. This one's going to be a dogfight. I think Houston could easily win this game. Not saying they will, but this is going to be a dogfight for sure. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Kos Sports Show. If you like the podcast, be sure to give it a like. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Kos Sports. And I hope to see you guys this next week on the Kos Sports Show. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Have a great time watching all the college football. I know for a fact I will when I'm in Death Valley on Saturday night watching Clemson play against Georgia Tech. And I hope you all have fun watching all your games as well. But anyway, I will see you next time on the Kos Sports Show.